I am Dr. Garcia, and welcome to Early Childhood Learning Bites. Today's topic is big emotions. Big emotions is something that we have all been witness to, right? You've seen children have super big emotions, frustration, irritation, even anxiousness that looks like anger, right? And then we see sadness, like deep sadness, where children just kind of fall onto the floor and just start crying and crying. So these big emotions that children are experiencing are very real experiences. And I want to make this very clear. The emotions that come up within their physical body are real. Okay? They're not seeking attention. Children are not attention seekers. They are connection seekers. And what happens when children are experiencing big emotions is oftentimes there's something to trigger that. There's something that activates an emotional reaction within the body. Now, our brains are constantly checking to make sure that we are safe. That's what our brain does. There's certain parts of our brain that does that specifically, but our brain's job is to do that. And when children in their own way and in their own experience see a situation that may feel unsafe to them, their body is going to react, their body's going to respond. Sometimes, and there are lots of ways and there's lots of things that happen that may provoke a situation, and it's going to be dependent on every single child. But let's talk about the actual big emotion for a moment. So sometimes what happens is we have a stress response system, and that's activated. And so three of the responses that people go through, so it's not just young children, but people in general go through, is the fight, flight, or freeze. Now there are more. I want to make that very clear. We're just going to talk about the three. So what happens is sometimes in the fight response, children will yell, they'll scream, they'll throw things. Sometimes it feels like they are pushing back against you. And when they are in the flight response, when their body goes into flight response, and sometimes they go through all three of these, okay? Not always, but sometimes they do. And so that might mean that the child takes off, runs away, hides behind the shelf, like tries to get as far away from you as possible. And then there's the freeze and sometimes collapse. So what happens, the child completely freezes, stares at you, doesn't say anything, doesn't have a response when you ask questions. Sometimes they'll curl up in a ball and just lay there, dazed out completely. So what happens, and there's lots of variations within that. So what happens is the child it goes into a state of not being able to respond to you. Right then is not the time to have a conversation. Right then is not the time to teach a lesson. Right now isn't the time to get the child to do whatever you had asked the child to do. When children are in their big emotions, we have to actually be the pillar of strength. And so what that means is that you, as the adult, need to be calm. You need to be able to look at the child and be able to feel love and connection for the child. Now, so often adults are irritated. They've had it. This is the 10th time this has happened. Can't believe, blah, 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 blah. And we as adults get into our own reactive state. You cannot support a child who is in that state if you are also in a reactive state. You cannot do that. And we come in with our own sort of lens, expectations, what we think coulda, shoulda, had, like all of these things that we are experiencing the situation through. And so the practice for grown-ups, like I never just talk about, hey, here's the strategy you use for the child, because that in itself doesn't work. You have to be the pillar of strength. You have to be the calm in the storm. You have to see that the child is having a difficult experience. That's all it is. They're having a challenging experience right now. They're not trying to upset you. They're not trying to get attention. They're simply having an emotional experience. So they have to feel safe. They have to feel connected. They have to have an adult who is willing to see the good in them as they have this emotional experience. So the training is about us. The training is about how I show up when children are having big emotions. So let me tell you what would happen with me when I was first learning how to do this. I would have a situation happening, let's say in the block area, right? And here I hear it, right? Because there's a boom, 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 like something's happened, right? So I'm alerted. I look over there. Now you have to be consciously aware. What are your initial thoughts? What are your initial thoughts about that child and thoughts about that situation? You have to be consciously aware. Because if your thoughts are, well, there he goes again. There she is throwing stuff again. Every day we deal with this. Those thoughts, you have already put that in motion, and you cannot be of support to children if you are walking across the room with that already going on in your mind. You can't, because you're not coming in with an open heart so that you can help the child find their calm. Okay? So I'm going to play, remember, boom, boom, boom. I turn around. I'm aware of my thoughts. My thoughts are, how can I help the child? How can I help this particular child? Okay. I'm aware. I'm not creating a story in my mind. Like, I need to be very aware of that, because sometimes we do this thing where it's like, oh, he probably hit her. She probably hit him. Like, this is probably what happened. And we go in sometimes with our own agenda when that happens. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? You know not to hit her, and you don't know the story. So turn around, consciously aware of what I'm thinking. How can I be most helpful to this child? Now, as I am walking, I am taking breaths, my own breaths. I am aware of what I am experiencing emotionally in my body. I am aware of it. I have to be aware of it. In order for me to be able to shift and be fully present for children and to be able to help them move through this experience, I have to be the calm. So I have to make sure that I am in the state that's going to serve best. Okay? And I always talk about being of service. So that's what I mean by that. I'm in service to others. So as I'm walking over there, I'm taking my breaths, okay? I'm also telling myself these words because this works for me. I tell you to find what works best for you. I am safe. I am loved. I can do this. And the reason why I do this is because our brain is going through a freak out place, especially if we are feeling like we're going to react, okay? I am safe. I am loved. I can do this. Sometimes the loved part is hard for people, so you can easily replace that with something else, okay? Sometimes people will do something like, I am safe, I am calm, I can do this, okay? So I walk over there and I'm gonna take a breath as I'm responding to the child. So instead of just jumping in and, reacting to the situation, I'm gonna respond, okay? Now, when I do this, I'm going to believe that the child has good intentions. So I'm going to make sure that my thoughts aren't all the things the child has done that wasn't okay, or the pattern of behavior that we're seeing. Like, I'm going to be very aware that that I see the good in the child. And so sometimes as I'm sitting down, it's a lot of stuff happening beforehand, right? Sometimes I'm sitting down and remind myself of what makes this child an incredible human being. What makes this child an incredible human being? Every single child, you should have a list of at least 3 things that make them an incredible human being. Okay? And that's what I focus in. When I'm working with children, I focus in on what makes them an incredible human being. That's my running thoughts about every single child. And so as I get there, I go, okay, what makes this child an incredible human being? Like, that's what I'm telling myself. I'm thinking about this. And then I'm going to respond to the child by, and it's really hard to give you the steps for this, because every child is different. Every situation is different. The way a child responds to you, how you relate to the child, it is unique to every single child and who you are as an adult. But the first thing that I do is I acknowledge what I see. I notice that the blocks are knocked over. I see tears coming down your face. I see, I see you doing this. I'm wondering what's happening right now. Okay. I might guess if the child is in a frantic, like screaming and yelling, I might guess it looks like you might be feeling frustrated right now. Like I might guess it and I'm going to say it quietly. And sometimes I say nothing. Because when a child is just like an adult is in a reactive state, they can't actually process what you're saying. They're in this back part of their brain. They're not in the part of the brain that can actually think about, the reasons why I behave this way. The young children don't know that anyway. But they like, what am I going to do next? And all that problem solving thing that happens, like they're incapable of doing that. Their brain actually goes offline. And I don't care if you're 40 or 40, this happens. So sometimes I say nothing. I just sit down. And if they're like playing in the block area, I just sit close to them. And, I move things away. If there's a chance that they might be getting hurt, I make sure that the other children are safe. And what I might say to children at a different time of the day, sometimes we have very big emotions. We do. Sometimes we get frustrated. Sometimes we get sad. Sometimes we feel irritated. We feel these things, and it's okay for us to have those experiences. And if somebody else is having that, we have to think, how can we be most helpful to Jeremy right now? How can we be most helpful to Alisa right now? What can we do? Sometimes what we can do is just move away and give them space. So in that moment, I'm thinking, what can I do to be most helpful? So I move things away so the child can have these very big emotions. But I'm not going to jump right in and say words unless there's a child that might be getting, hurt or whatever. Then I'm going to use the word stop. I'm not going to use the word no. I'm going to use the word stop. Okay. And I'm not going to yell it. I'm going to get quieter and closer. And so I'm usually down at children's level and I'm going to say stop. Okay. And that's just to stop whatever interaction is happening that could be harming that child and other children as well in that situation. Okay. Now, as I am working through whatever's going on with the child, so I'm going to describe what it is that I see happening. I'm going to try to label it, but I might be completely wrong. So instead of saying you are angry, that's too definitive. I'm not going to say you are that, because none of us are angry. We're happy, we're sad, we're frustrated, we're irritated, we're all of these things within a matter of 20 minutes. Okay. So no one is anything. I say, it looks like you might be experiencing some frustration or you're feeling overwhelmed. And I use those big words. I really do. Because too many grown-ups only understand happy, sad, and glad, or happy, sad, and mad. Like that's all that we really feel and experience and acknowledge in terms of what's happening within us. So we want to teach children the experience of having all of these emotions because we do have them. We're just not very good at labeling them. And so I'm going to guess what the child might be feeling if they are in the state where they can listen and respond to me. If not, my job is to be the pillar of strength, to stay calm and be there as they have the experience. Please do not send the child to timeout. Please do not tell the child when you're done, you can join us. Please do not use guilt. Like, don't you want to play with your friends? Don't you want to play in the block area? If you can't play here, we're going to have to move you. Please do not engage in those types of conversations. Those are not helpful. And it also can be even more activating for the child because now they perceive you as a threat. And the brain's job is to perceive any threat, whether it's imaginary or real. That's the brain's job. Okay, so when a child is escalated in having their big emotions, our job is to stay at the state of calm and to help them until they are in a calmer state. Now, during this entire time, am taking deep breaths. This entire time I'm keeping a neutral, loving, and I'm going to show you. Because sometimes this is what happens. We get like this, okay? Before I come down to their level, I'm going to drop my shoulders. I'm going to notice my jaw. Not that it's clench, because oftentimes we're walking around with clenched jaws. Drop my shoulders. And moving from this to this. Okay, I'm going to do it again. And I want you to try this with me. Instead of this, and my back even tightened up there. Like, notice that. Notice that. Your hands clenched. Notice that. Okay, you're going to go. Drop the shoulders. Check the jaw. Soften the expression. And then I'm going to add one more thing that I do. I open my heart. I open my heart. The child is doing the best they know how to do because they're little kids. They are young children. And big emotions affect all of us. Again, whether you're 4 or 40, it don't matter. All of us have experienced big emotions. We just tend to tolerate children's big emotions far less. So our role and our responsibility is help them to be able to move through this experience without feeling bad, without feeling guilty, without telling them what they felt was like, to dismiss it. Like, that's not what we should be doing. We should not be dismissing their emotional state. It was a very real experience, a very real experience. So I am the calm. I am the safe. And that's why I go through this. And I'm extending love as the child is in their big emotions. I'm not taking it personal. Even if the child says, "You're a stupid teacher, I hate you, I want you to walk away." You take a breath, drop the shoulders, check the jaw, soften the expression, open your heart. Okay? So the child, again, may be saying those things, but it isn't a personal attack on you. This is how they know how to deal with their emotions. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that I allow children to hurt me or hit me, because I know some folks are saying, well, that just gives them a free rein. It doesn't. It doesn't, because I'm very clear about my boundaries. I'm very clear that this is what's acceptable and this is not acceptable. And I am here to help you and other children. I am here to help you. And when they do move through their emotions, when they get to that place, I'm not having a lecture on the back end. I'm not telling them what they did was, inappropriate, or better not to do that. Am I going to have to call your parents? I don't use any threats or try to make a child feel guilty whatsoever, because their experience was real. And our job is to help them build the understanding and the know-how to be able to move through a big emotion and come out on the back end where they're still loved and they're still seen as incredible human beings, and that we keep moving on with life. So I might say, after it's all said and done, and I'm still there and I'm still loving and I'm still very clear about my boundaries, I might say on the back end of it, there's some blocks that we still need to pick up. And I know you really don't feel like doing this right now. I know that. Would you like to pick the rectangle or the triangle blocks or the rectangle blocks? The half unit blocks or the full unit blocks? Which ones would you like to pick up? Because I will help you. I never leave a child after we have had these big emotions. I stay with the child until we have completely 100% transitioned from that experience. Maybe it's to a new experience, maybe it's to circle time, maybe it's as we're walking out the door. I always stay to make sure that the child has actually moved through the entire experience. Okay? All right, try these things. Try them. And I would love to hear from you. Let me know how it's going. And believe me, it's a process. Okay? It's not going to work the best way for you the first or second or third time, because it takes practice. It takes lots and lots and lots of practice. And so give yourself that grace. Just know, I'm learning how to do this, and with practice, I'm going to get better.